You're watching the Knox Pages.
You are watching the Knox Pages.
You're watching the Knox Pages Game of the Week.
Welcome, folks, in this week's edition of the Knox Pages Game of the Week. My name is Grant Pepper. I'm a reporter at KnoxPages.com. It is Week 6. We are past the midway point in the high school football season. Conference title races are heating up, and this week's Game of the Week is a matchup that will pose serious implications on the Knox-Morrow Athletic Conference title race. Heading forward this season is East Knox, undefeated at 5-0, at Centerburg, 3-2 right out here at Centerburg High School Stadium. It's homecoming night for the Trojans, and we will get to that game here in a little bit. But first, let's take you around Knox County to see what happened last week in Week 5 in Knox County High School football action. In Week 5, Fredericktown broke into the win column with a 39-8 win over Mount Gilead at home. It was their first win of the season, and they did it in blowout fashion by 31 points. Ashland beat Mount Vernon 41-13 at Ashland last Friday night in a dominant second half. East Knox stayed undefeated and beat Cardington Lincoln 47-17. After a sluggish first half, they took over in the second half and never looked back. More on that game later. Highland beat Centerburg last week 36-6 in Sparta. In a local rivalry game, Highland was just too much for the Trojans. More on that game later. And Northmor beat Danville 35-7. Danville still winless at 0-5 so far this season. For more information on all those games, make sure to check out our website, KnoxPages.com. We've got the weekly football roundup up for Week 5 this week, and those will have full game breakdowns of each of those games as we head into Week 6. Now let's take a look at the Knox-Morrow Athletic Conference and Ohio Cardinal Conference standings as we head into Week 6. In the KMAC, East Knox and Northmor and Highland all tied for first place right now at 2-0 in the conference. East Knox 5-0 overall after their win last week. Northmor also 5-0, and Highland is 4-1. They've won 4 straight since that Week 1 loss to Bloom Carroll. In second, Centerburg at 1-1. They are 3-2 overall. Also in second, Fredericktown 1-1, picking up that first win, also a conference win last week. They are 1-4 on the season. And then tied for third, still winless, are Cardington Lincoln, Danville, and Mount Gilead, all at 0-2 in the conference and 0-5 overall. In the OCC, West Holmes and Worcester sit atop at 2-0 right now. West Holmes undefeated at 5-0 this season. Worcester is 3-2. Those two teams will play each other on Friday night. Ashland is in second at 1-0 after their win over Mount Vernon on Friday. They are 4-1 overall. Lexington is third at 1-1, 1-4 overall. Mansfield Senior 0-1, 2-3 overall. And then Mount Vernon and Masson are currently tied in the bottom of the conference for 5th at 0-2 in the conference. Mount Vernon's 2-3 overall, while Madison is 1-4. And that sets us up nicely for this week's Knox Pages Game of the Week between two teams that are just one game apart atop the KMAC standings. For Centerburg, after falling 36-6 on the road at Highland last week, turning around and winning a game against East Knox here on homecoming will be crucial if they wish to stay apace atop the KMAC standings with the conference's current top 3, East Knox, Northmor, and Highland. Meanwhile, for East Knox, this will be their first game against a team with a winning record so far this season, and it will be the beginning of a brutal stretch over the next 4 weeks, which will likely determine the team's conference title fate. They'll face Centerburg, Northmor, and Highland over the next month. But East Knox is rolling into this tough stretch of the season, highly regarded as probably the KMAC's hottest team right now, as they're beating teams by an average of 48 points per game. They are 5-0, and they have scored 55 points per game over those first 5 games. Quarterback Caden Lester has led the team with 1,383 passing yards so far this season, 11 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Running back Cason Crownapple has also been a huge threat in that offensive machine, running for 750 yards and 18 touchdowns on just 42 carries. That's 17.8 yards per carry. Like I said, they're averaging 55 points per game. Last week's 47-17 win over Cardington Lincoln was the first time East Knox did not crack the 50-point mark so far this season. Now, second-year Bulldog head coach Cody Reese told me this week that a lot of his team's offensive success so far this season, in his eyes, has come from their experience and increased chemistry.
The second year in the offense, that has a lot to do with it. The kids, they have a lot more better understanding of what to do and how to do it and when to do it. It's not something that so it's kind of that part's helped out. And the kids are they're close and they're good friends with one another. So they're a close-knit group, and that helps out a lot. So with communication and those types of things.
Junior quarterback Caden Lester told me that his offense's balanced attack, powered by a big offensive line up front, has helped them be more effective this season. Defenses have to account for his throwing ability as well as Case and Crown Apple's strong running ability, which is a tall task for a defense over the course of a game.
Oh, I mean, it all starts up front with our hogs up front. I mean, they're like best. So we just kind of feel it out at the start of the game. I mean, we like doing whatever we want, whatever the defense gives us, we'll play with it. So.
Now, despite his team's staggering dominance over the first 5 weeks of the season, and like I said, East Knox has won those games by an average of 48 points per game, head coach Cody Reese told me that the team still needs to work on the small things like the fundamentals, things that hurt them last week in the first half against Carrington and Lincoln when they were up just 27-17 at halftime. It was the most points East Knox had allowed in one half so far this season.
We were working on mentality. Last week we did feel our mentality was where it needed to be if we want to get to where we want to be. So we're definitely working on mentality and approach, and then the fundamentals. We have a lot of fundamental things to work on. More pleased with watching film with what we saw. So that's an area that we need to improve upon immediately if we want to be successful.
For East Knox, Friday represents their first real challenge of the season. Yes, they're 5-0, they've been dominant in those wins, but they've faced 5 teams with a combined record of just 2-23. They beat 3 winless teams. Centerburg, meanwhile, is 3-2, and playing them right here at Centerburg Stadium will be a much stiffer challenge for the Bulldogs in Week 6.
They're a physical team, very well coached, disciplined team, and so they're going to give us a lot of fits. They give you a lot of formations. Defensively, they're physical. With that physicality, we got to try to see matchups that we like, see what they're giving us, so that we can try to take advantage of that. But like I say, very well coached team. It's going to be a very tough game for us.
Centerburg's biggest offensive threat is quarterback John Shisby, a shifty, dual-threat QB who does it all for the Trojans. He leads the team in rushing and has also thrown 4 passing touchdowns so far this season. Cody Reese told me that it will be crucial to stop Shisby if the Bulldogs plan on coming out of Centerburg with a win on Friday night.
He's a great runner, great athlete, so it comes down to fundamentals and making sure you're being disciplined in every aspect so that running lanes and such don't open up for those type of players. Try to keep them bottled up if you can. Just on top of discipline, effort. Effort's a key ingredient with that as well. So hopefully we'll be able to we'll see what happens on Friday night.
And after a first half of the season in which East Knox took care of business, it's go time now for the Bulldogs. Like I said, this is the beginning on Friday of a stretch that will likely define East Knox's regular season, as they'll face Centerburg in Week 6, Northmor in Week 7, and Highland in Week 9. It all begins Friday for East Knox, but for Caden Lester, now the experienced quarterback leader of this group, he knows it's important not to look ahead and to take things one game at a time. After all, last year, East Knox started 7-0, but lost their last 3 games, missing out on a shot at KMAC title and a playoff berth. For the Bulldogs, it is literally one step, 1 week at a time, even during the stretch run.
We got to stay focused, 1 week at a time. That's the biggest week. We can't look too forward because that may come back to bite us like it did last year. So 1 week at a time, we're just playing East Knox football.
Meanwhile, out here in Centerburg, unfortunately for the Trojans, they'll come into Week 6 without some of the key star power that propelled them to wins over the likes of Utica, Northridge, Johnstown, and Carrington and Lincoln earlier this season. Running back Donnell Marshall and linebacker Michael Kuhn will both be out again this week, according to head coach Andy Colella, as they were hurt last week against Highland. Last week was a frustrating one for the Trojans, who were shorthanded and overwhelmed by Highland's size up front. Highland led 24-6 by halftime and never looked back. Highland had 408 rushing yards on the night. Centerburg tallied just 91 total yards last Friday night, and John Shisby, Centerburg's star player, their dual-threat QB, was held to just 8 yards against the stingy Highland defense. He scored the team's lone touchdown last Friday.
Yeah, physically they just kicked our butt up front, and it was a test in that department for our guys. We had some success the last couple of weeks being able to run the football, but when you're playing a senior-dominated team up front with guys who've been around for a couple of years, it's hard to go against that sometimes. And I think it will be an awakening or kind of a reboot process for us to understand that we still have a ways to go, in all phases of offense, defense, and special teams.
The Trojans will look to rebound quickly this week against another KMAC title contender in East Knox. Senior wide receiver and defensive back Joel Rings told me this week that East Knox presents a much different challenge for his Trojans than did Highland. Whereas Highland preferred the run attack on offense, using a 4 running back system and running nearly every down, East Knox relies much more on the passing game.
Yeah, it's a totally different challenge from Highland. It's like two opposite, offenses. Highland's really good on the run, and East Knox is like the opposite. They're really good in the pass game, and they've been pretty good at what they do, but I feel like our DBs are better than the receivers, so I think it would be a pretty good job Friday.
Head coach Andy Colella told me this week that against a big play offense like East Knox, it will be key to get pressure on their quarterback, Caden Lester. Meanwhile, on offense, the Trojans will try to get back to that effective running game that led them to a 3-1 start before last week's loss.
Yeah, they got skill guys all over the place. They're a big play offense. That they like to hit those big plays. And you got to try to limit those as much as possible, get some pressure on their quarterback. That helps with that. So if we feel we can get some pressure, up front and try to limit the big plays, that'll give us a chance. And then, on offense, we get back to running the football. And, that also we have to work on being able to pass off of that as well. That's something that we've struggled with, throughout the entire season, and something that we've focused on this week. So, hopefully that run game can open that up a little bit for us this week.
Colella said that this week at practice, the team has rebounded well from last week's 36-6 loss, and they'll need to do so quickly before facing an undefeated team in East Knox at home on Friday night.
Yeah, just how you respond, is the key thing there. They're young kids at the same time, so they can move on pretty quickly. You want to learn from that experience, but at the same time, you got to make sure you come in, on Monday, and it's time we got another tough challenge ahead of us. So, hopefully they can do that. And they've done that so far this week.
Coach told us to refocus ourselves and to recommit ourselves. Last week, a lot of our guys didn't study or whatever the case may be, but I think together we came together and just refocused ourselves and our commitment level.
Sitting just one game back from first place right now in the KMAC, the Trojans know that a win Friday against undefeated East Knox would be huge in staying in contention for a conference title this season. But much like East Knox, Coach Colella wants his team focused on one game at a time as they head down this very important stretch of their season, with many of their preseason goals still within reach.
Yeah, absolutely it is. This is the beginning of the second half of the season. You got a 5-0 team coming into our place here. So, we try to take it one game at a time, one day at a time. But also if you kind of look at the big picture, there's still some things out there that if we take advantage of the opportunities that we have, we can still get to a lot of the things that we talked about at the beginning of the season. So this is just another step in that direction. We've been in this situation before, and kids on the team have been a part of that situation, so they understand, what it takes and how to respond in order to get the things that they want to get.
Going up against the 5-0 Bulldogs, Joel Rings seemed confident his team could make a statement with a win on Friday night.
Obviously, any game's a big game, especially this one because they're 5-0, and then they're undefeated. And I feel like our guys are better than their guys, and then we can come out and upset them.
East Knox and Centerburg will square off in our Knox Pages Game of the Week right here on Friday night at Centerburg High School Stadium. Kickoff will be at 7 p.m., and it will also be homecoming night on Friday for the Trojans. Make sure to check back on our website, knoxpages.com, later that night for our game recap. Now let's take you around Knox County for the rest of this week's high school football matchups. Like I said, East Knox going to Centerburg on Friday night. East Knox at 5-0, Centerburg at 3-2 in our Knox Pages Game of the Week. Last year, East Knox beat Centerburg 34-0, but it's a little different story so far this year, as the Trojans have already surpassed their 2017 win total at 3-2 so far this season. This week, East Knox fell from 5th to 8th in the Division 6 Region 23 OHSAA computer ratings after their 30-point win over Carrington Lincoln. Meanwhile, Centerburg fell out of the playoff picture in this week's ratings as they went from 8th to 10th in that region. Fredericktown goes to Danville this week. Fredericktown at 1-4, Danville at 0-5. That will be Danville's homecoming game, a 7 p.m. kickoff. Last year, Danville won that game 42-7. Mount Vernon plays an out-of-conference game this week against Zanesville at home. Zanesville at 3-2, Mount Vernon at 2-3. Those two teams did not play each other last year. Interesting to note, in the OCC this week, West Holmes, who's 5-0, was rated 5th in Division III Region 9 computer ratings, while Ashland, who's 4-1, was rated 7th in Division II Region 7. Worcester at 3-2 is the only other OCC school with a winning record. They placed 16th in Division II Region 7. Highland goes to Mount Gilead this week. Mount Gilead has not won a game since October of 2016. This week will be a tough task against the rolling Fighting Scots. Highland at 4-1. They've won 4 straight. Mount Gilead at 0-5. Last year, Highland won this matchup 42-8 in Marengo. Highland moved into the playoff picture this week in their computer ratings in Division 4 Region 14. They went from 9th to 6th this week after their win over Centerburg. And Carrington-Lincoln will face Northmor on the road on Friday night. Carrington-Lincoln 0-5, Northmor at 5-0. Northmor won this game last year 32-7, and this year they fell from 3rd to 4th in this week's Division 6 Region 23 OHSAA computer ratings after their 28-point win over Danville in Week 5. And that's going to do, folks, for this week's edition of the Knox Pages Game of the Week. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow our sports coverage all season long at our website, knoxpages.com. And also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Knox Pages for live game updates, game recaps, features, and more. Again, that's at Knox Pages on Facebook and Twitter. Again, my name is Grant Pepper. I'm a reporter at knoxpages.com. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Knox Pages Game of the Week. Go enjoy Week 6, and we'll see you next week.